Hi, my name is Brian Fisher. The program is Focal Point. The network is AFR Talk, American Family Radio Talk Network. Thank you for being in the conversation today aboard the USS Focal Point. It is our patrol boat in which we patrol the choppy waters of America's public life, looking relentlessly for the coordinates where truth intersects with politics. Our commander on the bridge, the scriptures, our nautical charts, Holy Spirit, our navigator, and I serve as your loyal, humble, and cheerful first mate. Just a quick note as we start this second hour on this Thursday edition of Focal Point. I want to thank you again, as well as thanking God for the way you stood together with us during our share-a-thon. We had a record number of listeners pledging. About 10,000 of you called in to make pledges. We had a record amount of support pledged, a little over $1.7 million pledged to keep this voice, Focal Point and AFR Talk, on the air. And we'd like to know what prompted you to make your pledge. So were you prompted to support to help keep Focal Point and AFR Talk on the air because of the moral decay that you're seeing around us? Because someone you know or love is impacted by the ministry of AFR? You just feel a prompting of God to do this thing? Or do you just have simple desire to invest in the mission of AFR? So we'd like to hear from you. That's going to be tomorrow. We're going to make this the focus tomorrow. So don't call in today. We want to make this a big focus tomorrow. We'd like you to call our listener line. We'll give you the number tomorrow where you can call in and share why you chose to stand together with us during Share-a-thon. So that's something to look forward to for tomorrow. Now let's play. Well, let's see if we can go to some, let's take some phone calls here. We've been talking here about your reaction to what is taking place in Libya, what took place in Libya, and these hearings, and the Jay Carney and Debbie Wasserman Schultz out there just fumbling all over themselves to try to come up with some kind of an explanation. And by the way, there's a pretty good reason to think that the purpose for the attack on the Libyan consulate was to put pressure on the Obama administration to release the Blind Sheikh. That's Omar Abdel Rahman. He's the one that was responsible for the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. And they're wanting to get him released. And this was all part, according to these sources, Al-Qaeda trying to put pressure on Obama to let him go. And Representative Patrick Meehan yesterday, he tried to get the Undersecretary of State, Patrick Kennedy, to state unequivocally that the State Department will not consider doing that. I think the death toll in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing was something like 6 people dead. This guy's in prison. He should have been executed by now. This was a capital crime. 6 people dead, innocent people, hadn't done anything to harm Omar Abdel Rahman or anybody else, and yet he blew the place up. So he deserves to die for what he did, and now there's some possibility that he's going to be released, turned back over to some Muslim nation somewhere. And so Meehan's trying to press Kennedy, look, can you promise me that the State Department's not going to do this? They're not even going to consider transferring or releasing this guy, and he could not get an answer from Undersecretary Kennedy. So what that means is he could not unequivocally say it's not going to happen. That means it's still an active possibility. Let's go to the phones. Let's go to Ron in Columbus, Ohio. Ron, you're on Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Brian.
What's on your mind?
Hey, I just couldn't help but notice after hearing all this going on today about the denial, the lying, everything that was happening, and especially after hearing the part with Pierce Morgan and Debbie Wasserman Schultz, that she was saying he was saying they were false, and she was denying that.
Well, her exact quote, he said it's completely wrong, and she agrees, but says that doesn't mean it was false. So it could be completely wrong and yet not be false, according to Debbie Wasserman Schultz and her Wonder World. Anyway, go ahead.
Right. My observation, at least what I was thinking back to, all of a sudden it popped into my mind, was now maybe the administration here currently has their own WMD problem, as did George Bush.
How do you mean? Explain that.
Maybe I'm thinking wrong, but when he was giving intelligence.
Oh, yeah. You know, that's actually an outstanding observation, Ron, because remember that what we were told when they went in, they found no WMDs. It turned out all the intelligence services were saying the same thing, and Bush just got absolutely hammered for listening to and believing what intelligence sources were saying. And,
my thought was that he believed them and he went on what was true. But to hear the truth that we hear coming out of this, that they knew right away that there was no truth. The truth of what actually happened and what they told us was two different things, and it was immediate.
Yeah.
So that's kind of hard to swallow. But I appreciate you for everything you do and helping us to learn, and those people like me who don't get out there to hear enough.
All right. Well, great, Ron. Listen, thank you for that. And that's a very insightful observation. Got to ponder on that a little bit more. But, because I think what Ron has put us onto there is something very, very important. I mean, the whole thing with Saddam and weapons of mass destruction all had to do with intelligence, well, what the intelligence was saying. And you got a similar deal here with President Obama. And what they're doing in this case is they were trying to cover up what their intelligence was telling them. Rather than acting on good, solid intel, they were trying to pretend it was something else. They were trying to pass the blame off on something else. Let's go to James, Lafayette, Louisiana. James, welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. What's on your mind?
Yes, sir. Just got a very simple question. The gal that was put on administrative leave.
Yes.
From the university?
At Gallaudet University?
Gallaudet, that's the one in D.C., correct?
Yes, it's actually in Maryland, technically. Or, well, maybe she lives in Maryland. The university might be in D.C. I think she lives in Maryland, which is why she could sign the petition.
That's interesting because you realize that is a university for the deaf and hard of hearing.
Yes.
And so that even adds more interest into the statement that she was trying to get diversity. How do you want to say it?
Yeah.
Yes,
well, yeah. I mean, diversity.
Her job, and they're putting her on administrative leave.
Yeah, for being diverse.
Yes,
I mean, she's chief diversity officer. Here she is being diverse, adding to the richness of multiculturalism and diversity in America. You got people believing a whole bunch of things. Some people believing in same-sex marriage, other people believing in man-woman marriage. Isn't this wonderful? We are so diverse. We have room for everybody. We're inclusive. Not so much. All right, James, listen, thank you for the call. And you're right. She was African-American, and she's a woman, and she was the first African-American woman to get a Ph.D. from Gallaudet University. I think they'd be celebrating this, protecting her right to speech. And it is interesting that even Marylanders for Marriage Equality, that's the big pro-homosexual outfit in Maryland that's pushing same-sex marriage, they've come out and said, look, she shouldn't be punished for this. She ought to have her right to freedom of speech. I mean, they know that this is bad. They know that this makes the homosexual lobby, it reveals them for who they are as bullies. They are intolerant. They are bullies. And they know, the Marylanders that are pushing sodomy-based marriage, they know this makes them look real bad. It makes them look intolerant, makes them look like bullies. So they're trying to get Gallaudet University to reverse field. Grab one more call very quickly before the break. Let's go to Scott in Black Rock, Arkansas. Scott, welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. What's on your mind?
Hi, Brian. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. It's a shame we have to talk about our president this way, but isn't that guy being held without due process, that video?
The guy that made the video?
Yeah.
Well, I guess they could say that he's had his due process because they brought him up on a violation of probation beef, and he went to court and got, sent back to jail, and the judge revoked his bail. So if you look at the sort of kind of, technical legal process, they could probably say, well, he's had his due process, and we think he's a flight risk. He's got to stay where he's at.
Well, didn't Obama have a judge grant a waiver for that due process for 60 days? Doesn't that kind of make this guy a fall guy?
Well, yeah, and I appreciate the call, Scott. Got to let you go because they're up against a hard break. I'm not aware of President Obama intervening with some kind of a 60-day waiver, but I think very clearly this guy's a fall guy, and the only reason that he's in jail today is because President Obama is accusing him of making a video that blasphemes the Prophet Muhammad. Can't have that in America. Back in 2.